Hi everybody, Steve Griffiths here, developer of the MTPredictor software program. In this video I'd like to look at a Forex chart. This is a 3-minute chart of the euro against the US dollar using FXCM data through eSignal into MTPredictor 6.5. So a 3-minute chart of the euro against the US dollar. Just want to look at a couple of setups that I was talking about in our customer training webinar yesterday, where I started by looking at this TS3 buy setup. Now for this video I'd like to keep it a bit standard because this was against a red STF, so standard traders would want to avoid that. However, in the webinar I was suggesting that you could consider it because it was a potential Holy Grail setup. But actually the better Holy Grail setup was this one here, and this is the one I'd like to look at in today's video. So the overall position is the euro was coming down and made pretty much a double bottom. You can see here this low here is pretty much the same price as this, so we had pretty much a double bottom. We then had an initial rally up. If you notice, if I do the DP from the prior swing, this is the swing into the low. So the prior swing here, if I click on this high here, do excuse me, a bit of a cough there. This high here, you can see that the initial rally went up and stopped right at the decision point target initially. So we consider this a wave 1 because it's the initial rally off the low. We then had a correction that unfolded in 3 swings, which would be an A, B and C. So for this we consider any potential trade off this low here would be a wave 2. Therefore we're looking to trade it as a wave 3 and that's the important point. If I put the analysis on, you'll notice that we did have one attempt here that did actually stop us out, so we would have had a -1R loss. We had another attempt here that would also stop us out, also for a -1 loss. Now that's important. It's important because as professional traders we all must realize and we all understand that losses can and do happen. It's just a fact of trading. However, this is a good example because here the 2 losses totaled -2R. Okay, -1 equals -2. I'll just clear the chart off. Now the third attempt here on this triangle, if I zoom in a bit, this triangle here, if I put the analysis on here, you can see how the trade was entered here, but obviously it wasn't stopped out. In fact, it made this low before going up and taking you in on the entry. So even though there's 2 labels there would only actually be 1 trade. So let's have a look at this trade. For a standard MTPredictor trade, it's on a black STF, so standard traders could take it. It goes up into our first target where there would have been a nice plus 5R profit. So even at the first target, plus 5R would have more than made up for the -2R loss there. So plus 5 minus 2 equals a profit overall of plus 3R. So even at the first target it would have actually been a good trade. However, because we assume that this is a wave 2, we therefore don't look to come out at the first target. We actually play for the typical wave 3. Can you see this? It's the green target here. So if I put my analysis on now at the typical wave 3 WPT, which is here, you can see that the profit suddenly goes up from plus 5R actually up to plus 13R. So in other words, you turn an initial risk of, in this case, 2% on a $20,000 sample account, so an initial risk of just less than $400, actually comes out with a profit of just over 5,300 or approximately 5,300. And this was a great example in particular because it was a great example of what I call my Holy Grail trade, where we get the major bottom. In this case we had a double bottom here. We then had the initial rally up. Interesting, initial rally up actually went right up to our decision point target from the prior swing down to the low, so that gave you an indication of where that high was coming in. That would be considered a wave 1. We then look for the A, B, C correction into a wave 2. The market then rallies up as a potential wave 3. and that's why we actually don't look to come out at our first targets here, which is our wave C targets. We look to go to the typical wave 3 WPT, which is here, and because of the correct position sizing, even though we had a -1 R loss, the next trade at plus 13 R then more than made up for that and actually resulted in a very nice trade. And if I go forward, you can see basically the euro chopped sideways for a little way there, another couple of attempts at trades there, which would have been break even. But the point being is that this allowed you to capture the entire swing up here from the potential wave 2 into the typical wave 3 WPT for a nice trade. So again, this was actually on a 3-minute chart of the euro against the US dollar using FXCM data through eSignal. So great example of the MTPredictor Holy Grail trade setup, but this time on a Forex chart.